I was told there would be an update today.
Ma'am, these things take time.
We're doing everything we can.
Years of searching, crying into pillows that still smelled faintly of your little girl's strawberry shampoo, blaming foreign police, blaming tourists, blaming yourself, only to discover the monster was sleeping in the same bed every night. That is the cruelest betrayal imaginable. In a modest house on the edge of a mid-sized American town, Rena Marlowe, 43, night shift ER nurse and morning playgroup teacher, carried that invisible weight every single day. She moved through life like someone walking underwater, slow, deliberate, every breath and effort. The fluorescent corridor of St. Mary's Hospital flickered above her as she signed out at 11:07 p.m., her signature shakier than it had been 5 years earlier. Colleagues called good night. She answered with the automatic, bright and early, even though nothing about her mornings felt bright anymore. 10 years earlier, Rena had stayed behind for a double shift so Rick, former Army sergeant, shrapnel survivor, proud father, could take their children, Tommy, 10, and Leah, 8, to Hurghada, Egypt, for what was supposed to be healing family time. Rick's PTSD had worsened after the VA cut his benefits. Therapists said travel and father-child bonding might help. Rena believed them. She waved goodbye at the airport gate, promising to join them in 4 days. She never did. The hospital needed her for an incoming multi-vehicle pileup. While she was compressing a stranger's chest and calling time of death at 3:14 a.m., her daughter vanished from a beachside resort on Gifton Island. Rick called her sobbing, incoherent. Tommy, traumatized, could barely speak. Egyptian police took statements, searched for 3 days, then quietly downgraded the case to runaway minor. American embassy officials offered condolences and pamphlets. The trail went cold before Rena even landed in Cairo. Vocabulary and idiom spotlight for English learners. The trail went cold. An idiom from tracking animals or criminals. When clues disappear, investigators lose the scent, just like a bloodhound loses a trail in rain. Carried that invisible weight. Metaphor. Grief is heavy but unseen, like wearing a lead vest no one else notices. Shrapnel survivor. Shrapnel equals metal fragments from an explosion. Many veterans carry pieces inside their bodies for life, both literal and psychological. Downgraded the case. Police term meaning they stopped treating it as urgent, often because of lack of evidence or political pressure. Historical context. Egypt in 2015 to 2016 saw a spike in reported child disappearances linked to tourist areas, partly because of political instability after the 2013 military takeover and crackdown on Muslim Brotherhood affiliates. Tourism police were under-resourced. Many cases involving foreigners were handled with diplomatic caution rather than aggressive investigation. The U.S. State Department's annual Trafficking in Persons report repeatedly listed Egypt as Tier 2, not fully compliant but making efforts, noting that children were especially vulnerable in resort zones where poverty, corruption, and transient populations collided. Leah's case mirrored hundreds of others that year. Vanished during a family holiday, initial panic, then bureaucratic silence. Rena never stopped searching. She joined every missing children forum, learned basic Arabic phrases, mailed letters to Egyptian NGOs, paid private investigators until savings evaporated. Rick deteriorated faster. Alcohol became his medication of choice. VA-prescribed SSRIs gathered dust. Tommy grew up quiet, watchful, always positioning himself between his parents during arguments. Rena worked triple jobs, ER nights, playgroup mornings, weekend catering, so Tommy could save for college and Rick could recover at home. The house smelled permanently of stale beer and unwashed laundry. Love had not died. It had been suffocated under layers of guilt, rage, and silence. That night, after the usual fight, Rick drunk, Rena exhausted, accusations flying like shrapnel, Tommy witnessed his father slam Rena against the wall. The boy's silhouette in the doorway stopped the raised fist. Rick retreated, locked himself in the bedroom. Rena slept in Tommy's room, breathing in the scent of his laundry detergent, the only clean thing left in their lives. She woke at 10 a.m., missed her playgroup shift, panicked about money, then decided to surprise Tommy with lunch. On the shortcut through the alley, she saw yellow shoes, Tommy's favorite pair, on a young man talking to suspicious figures. She hurried away, unsettled. Back home, she flipped the heavy king-size mattress to change sheets and felt the strange seam. Scissors. Cotton stuffing. Photographs. Coordinates. An Egyptian phone number. Her heart jackhammered so hard she tasted metal. She called the number. A man answered in accented English. She hung up, terrified. Then Rick appeared outside the rusty Anchor bar, not drunk, but agitated. He saw the fear in her eyes, grabbed her arm, dragged her home, found the photos, laughed that hollow laugh. You always were thorough. He choked her. Her phone rang, Tommy. Rick dragged her to the garage, zip-tied her, drove her to the last call, a place she had never known existed. There, he handed her over to men who clearly did this kind of work regularly. Philosophical teaching. Betrayal by the person closest to you destroys more than trust. It destroys your map of reality. When the protector becomes the predator, every future relationship carries the scar of that first fracture. Yet survival demands we rebuild the map, one honest inch at a time. The back room of the last call smelled of rust, old beer, and fear. Rena sat zip-tied to a metal chair, wrists raw, watching the tattooed man, Jerome, load a single bullet into a revolver. He spun the cylinder once, showing her, "One bullet. For your husband." From Tommy. Her son's name in that sentence felt like a knife twisting sideways. Then Tommy appeared in the doorway, yellow shoes unmistakable now. He knelt, removed her gag, apologized for the restraints, explained he had paid Jerome more than Rick had, outbidding his own father to ensure Rick died before he could kill Rena. The plan: Rick upstairs with a paid woman, distracted, vulnerable. One shot. Clean. Final. Rena lunged, snatched Tommy's phone, pressed the SOS button. Emergency services' voice filled the room. Jerome cursed, unloaded the gun, fled with his crew. Tommy stared at his mother, rage, grief, relief, shame warring across his face. "Why did you stop me?" Rena cupped his cheeks. "Because I've already buried one child in my heart. I won't bury you in a prison cell." They wiped fingerprints, stepped outside just as police arrived. Rena told the officers Rick had abducted her. Tommy lifted his shirt, old belt buckle scars, cigarette burns, lash marks. Evidence Rick had never stopped hurting his children, even after Leia vanished. At the station, Tommy confessed everything. He had known for years that Rick killed Leia. That night in Egypt, Rick returned to their hotel room drunk and furious after arguing with the bartender. Leia had wandered to the beach alone earlier. Rick went to find her. He came back alone. No body. No witnesses. He told 10-year-old Tommy, "She ran away because she hated us. If you ever tell, I'll make your mother disappear too." For a decade, Tommy carried that secret, flinching every time Rick raised his voice, watching his mother work herself to exhaustion to keep them afloat, believing silence was protection. Vocabulary spotlight. Outbidding. Paying more than someone else to win control of something. Here, control over whether Rick lived or died. Macabre countdown. Macabre equals gruesomely grim. Countdown equals ticking towards something terrible. Idiom. Knife twisting sideways. Intensifies normal. Knife in the heart feeling. Betrayal hurts worse when it keeps moving. Historical parallel. Child abuse within military families spiked after the post. 9/11 wars. The U.S. Department of Defense Family Advocacy Program documented higher rates of domestic violence in households where one parent had multiple deployments and untreated PTSD. Alcoholism was a common cofactor. Many children, like Tommy, became parentified, taking adult responsibility for emotional safety because the non-deployed parent was working multiple jobs. The silence of child witnesses in such homes often lasts decades. When it breaks catastrophically. Modern relevance for English learners. Phrases like, carried that secret like a second heartbeat, or silence was his only armor, are advanced metaphorical expressions used in literature and psychology texts. Understanding them helps you read novels, Toni Morrison, Khaled Hosseini, and watch films about trauma with deeper comprehension. Rena listened to Tommy's recorded confession through the interview room wall, tears streaming. She had failed to see the bruises because she was never home. She had trusted Rick because she needed to believe in something. Now the only belief left was in her son's courage, the courage to choose truth over vengeance at the last possible second. Philosophical teaching: silence in the face of evil is not neutrality, it is complicity by omission. Yet breaking silence carries enormous cost: reputation, safety, family illusion. The moral courage to speak anyway is what separates victim from survivor. Thought-provoking message: if you are protecting a secret that protects an abuser, ask yourself, whose safety are you really protecting, theirs or your own fear of change? Truth is painful medicine, but silence is slow poison. Which will you choose today? Egyptian authorities, alerted by Interpol within 48 hours, raided a small fishing compound on Gifton Island using the coordinates Rena found. A local man, the one who answered her call, confessed under questioning. Rick had paid him $8,000 in 2015 to dispose of a child's body after claiming she had drowned accidentally during a late-night swim. The man led police to a shallow grave in a dry wadi behind a resort service road. Dental records, DNA from a preserved baby tooth Rena had kept in a locket. It was Leah. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the skull, consistent with being struck by a heavy object, perhaps a beer bottle or rock. Rick had never intended to report an accident. He staged a disappearance so he could control the narrative and the silence that followed. News footage showed Rena at the airport, boarding a flight to Cairo to claim her daughter's remains. Tommy stayed behind, under house arrest pending his conspiracy hearing. Rena stood on Gifton Beach at sunrise, holding Leah's locket, whispering apologies into the wind. She did not cry. The tears had run out years ago. Instead, she felt a strange, terrible relief. The not knowing had ended. The worst truth was better than endless maybe. Vocabulary spotlight: wadi, Arabic word for a dry riverbed that floods during rare rains, common in desert landscapes. Staged a disappearance, deliberately created the appearance of a runaway or abduction to hide murder. Idiom: control the narrative, shape how a story is told so others believe your version. Historical context: between 2011 to 2016, Egypt's tourism sector collapsed after the Arab Spring and subsequent terrorist attacks, e.g., 2015 metro jet bombing. Resorts became ghost towns. Desperate workers sometimes colluded in crimes against tourists for cash. Cases of Western children disappearing in resort areas were frequently closed quickly to avoid bad press. Leah's case fits that pattern, until a mother refused to stop asking. Modern relevance: digital forensics now allows families to keep pushing long after official interest fades. Apps like Find My, used ironically here by Tommy, international DNA databases, and crowdsourced investigations on platforms like web sleuths have solved decades-old cases. English learners: phrases like "the not knowing had ended" or "closure is a luxury grief rarely grants" appear frequently in true crime podcasts and memoirs. Rena returned home with a small wooden box containing Leah's remains. She and Tommy buried them in the backyard under a young olive tree, symbol of peace in Mediterranean cultures. That night, Tommy asked the question Rena feared most: "Do you hate me for almost becoming like him?" She answered, "I love you more because you stopped." Philosophical teaching: forgiveness is not excusing evil, it is refusing to let evil define your future. Tommy did not need to forgive Rick. He needed to forgive himself for surviving when Leah did not. Thought-provoking message: are you still punishing yourself for things you could not have known or stopped? Self-forgiveness is not weakness. It is the first step toward reclaiming the life evil tried to steal from you. Rick's trial lasted 9 weeks. He pleaded not guilty, claiming Leah ran away, that Tommy fabricated scars and memories, that Rena was hysterical from overwork. But the Egyptian confession, photos with coordinates, Tommy's scars, Rena's bruises from the abduction, and Rick's bar tab records from the night Leah died formed an unbreakable chain. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder, child abuse, spousal abuse, and conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Life without parole. Tommy's sentencing hearing came next. The prosecutor asked for 5 years. The defense asked for probation. Rena took the stand. She spoke for 47 minutes, without notes. She described every double shift, every missed bedtime, every time she told Tommy, "Daddy's just tired," while bruises bloomed under his sleeves. She ended with, "My son planned a murder to save my life. Then he chose not to pull the trigger." That choice, that single, agonizing choice, is who he really is. The judge sentenced Tommy to 3 years probation and mandatory trauma counseling. No prison time. Vocabulary spotlight. Unbreakable chain. Metaphor. Evidence so strong it cannot be snapped. Probation. Supervised freedom instead of jail. Idiom. Took the stand. Entered the witness box to testify. Modern relevance. Restorative justice models. Used in New Zealand, parts of Canada, increasingly in U.S. juvenile courts, focus on healing rather than pure punishment when the offender is also a victim. Tommy's case became a small landmark, a child who planned patricide to protect his mother, yet stopped himself, received mercy instead of decades behind bars. Philosophical teaching: justice without mercy is vengeance, wearing a robe. Mercy without justice is cowardice. The mature heart holds both scales level. Thought-provoking message: when someone you love commits a terrible act to protect you, do you judge the act or honor the intention behind it? Love sometimes requires us to hold two opposing truths at once: horror at what they almost did, and gratitude that they didn't. 3 years later, Rena and Tommy planted a second olive tree beside Leia's. Rena still worked nights at the ER, but only nights. The playgroup job had become full-time. She now trained other teachers on spotting signs of child abuse. Tommy finished community college, majoring in psychology. He wants to counsel veterans with PTSD and their families. They speak Leia's name every day, not as a ghost, but as a presence. The house no longer smells of beer. It smells of coffee, laundry detergent, and the faint sweetness of olive blossoms. They are not healed. Healing is not a destination. It is maintenance. Some nights Rena wakes gasping from dreams of yellow shoes and single bullets. Tommy still flinches at loud male voices. But they talk about it now. They cry together now. They forgive themselves, slowly, imperfectly, daily. Vocabulary spotlight. Restorative justice. System focused on repairing harm rather than only punishing. Maintenance. Ongoing work required to keep something emotional health functional. Universal wisdom. The opposite of love is not hate. It is indifference. Rena and Tommy refused indifference. They chose ferocious, inconvenient, painful love, the kind that looks at monsters and still sees the child who once refused to step on ants.